Hi, I'm John Ruggiero, and welcome to New Jersey Paranormal. Joining me today is my co-host Chris and our special guest Stacy Sabo. Now, we've had haunted objects on the show. We've never had someone who collects haunted objects before, and that's always been a big interest of mine, and a big curiosity of mine is, why would
someone collect this?
Yeah, collect haunted objects. Stacy, so where did your interest in quote-unquote haunted objects come from?
Yeah, for sure. So from a very young age, and we talked about this, I would go with my grandparents to yard sales and garage sales, and I always had a real interest in antique collecting. So I did a lot of antique collecting on my own, and when I got older, I would go to different stores. I was always very drawn to religious iconography, and I always felt like the items were choosing me. I always felt like there were energies attached to the pieces that I was drawn to, and I always felt like they were meant to come home with me. And that was kind of how I always chose my pieces. Starting to learn a little bit more about the supernatural and, the things that are out there that I wasn't very well aware of as a child because I was raised very religious.
Taboo.
Very taboo. You don't talk about that kind of stuff. You don't mess with that kind of stuff. But growing up and just learning and reading and educating myself on the paranormal, I became very interested in antique objects and things that were drawing me energy-wise.
So even as a kid, you were kind of drawn to these things when your parents would go antique shopping? There'd be something that you kind of felt?
Always. I always had a physical connection with things I purchased. I could go into a store and there could be 1,000 different things, and I would be drawn to one thing very specifically. And it could be in a section with things that I would have never gone to.
Kind of like we talked before, like if you go into a pet shop and there's just a certain pet that you're drawn to more than anybody else, even though they're all cute, and that's the one you got to go home with.
The dog chooses you. In this case, the objects have chosen me.
Is there a certain type of haunted collection that you have? Do you keep it to a theme or a certain thing, or can it be anything?
So one of the objects I got at Creeper Gallery that we talked about is probably my only outlier, but I normally am drawn to very religious crucifixes. I have a wall of all antique crucifixes. I have a lot of saint statues. I have a lot of really old pieces. And I know that one we'll get into later on that I can confirm is definitely haunted and affected me in a really big way. Is 2 crucifixes and some coffin plaques. So I've always been drawn to very religious pieces. My husband jokes, if you walked into my home, you would think I was an 80-year-old Sicilian widow.
Do you think this has to do with your background growing up?
Absolutely. I spent a lot of my time as a child with my grandparents, and that was how their house was, and that's kind of what their aesthetic was, and I think it was passed on to me, and I think it's a beautiful connection that I still have to them, and I think that's why I held on to it.
Yeah, that's like every Italian family. I come from an Italian family, so it's, the Last Supper painting up there, you have the crucifixes, and you have the plastic on the couches. So that's kind of
we have 3 Last Suppers.
Okay. So there you go.
And one is gold, so of course.
So when we talk about specifically haunted objects, do you actively go out there and look for those type of items? And if you do, where exactly are you looking for these items?
Yeah, for sure. So I wasn't very aware till recently that you could go to places and that they advertised that kind of thing specifically. So when I met you guys at Creeper was like opened a whole new world of possibilities for me. And I wound up going every weekend for 3 weekends after we were there because I was just so fascinated by what they had, and I had such a physical reaction to what was in there.
The Creeper Gallery is actually a store that sells
haunted objects.
Items, cases full
and
of them.
Unique artwork.
Right. Very unique artwork. Yes, very unique. But
so you go out with the mindset of buying a object that has an attachment. Is that your mindset?
Yeah. When I go to Creeper, I'm always, the other things are great. I always go right to the haunted cases. I think everyone tells a story, and I think the things that people have held on to and have been a part of their lives deserve to be preserved and deserve to have someone to carry that on and take care of it and respect it.
So honoring the memory of someone that who valued it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I can understand that.
Yeah, that's what we kind of talked about before when you and I initially spoke, is that your idea with these items is that someone had them, they had them for a long time, they meant a lot to them, obviously they held on to them for years and years and years, so you're now extending the legacy by now. You're the owner of the object, and you're going to continue caring for it, taking care of it. That's sort of part of your mindset.
Absolutely. I think that they create a connection between the two of us. One item that we spoke about was the Mother of Pearl Rosary that I got in an antique store in Asbury, and I was drawn right to it. They always have a ton of rosaries down there. And when I took it to my friend who's a medium, she put hands on it and she felt a woman's energy, someone who had this piece for most of her life, and it had cost a great deal of money when it was purchased, and she held on to that thing her entire life, something around 70 years, from when she was very young, because she felt like it was so special. And I don't think in today's day and age that we hold the same value for anything. Everything is very disposable, and for someone to hold on to something like that for an entire lifetime and be so proud of it and appreciate it for what it was, I think is so beautiful. And to be able to carry that on, I think is so special.
You talk about that because I actually have like a stuffed animal that's in my closet in a plastic bag, all like I've had since I was 3 years old. It means the world to me. It's been stuffed and restitched millions of times, falling apart. It means nothing. It looks like crap to everybody else, but I'm hoping when I go, my kids will keep passing this on because it meant everything to me.
Right, and that's what matters.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be attached to it, hopefully not, but it's something that mattered to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when you acquire these things, these items, how do you go about acquiring them?
So I've tried to go to estate sales. I always find really interesting energy at estate sales. It's not always the most positive. So I tend to not go to them too much. I really do enjoy more of the antique shopping. We have great antique stores here in New Jersey. We have great ones in Asbury, Lambertville. So I will peruse. I'll usually ask, do you have anybody who has predominantly mostly religious pieces and things like that. And again, I'm just very physically drawn to the pieces that I wind up taking
Do you
home.
ever have anybody just give you an item because it's haunted?
No, not yet, but I would probably take it. I would probably take it.
Go ahead.
So when we talk about haunted items, there is a sort of stigma attached to them, in that usually when you apply the label of haunted, there usually is some level of activity attached to that energy. So along those lines, has there ever been any kind of experiences for you after you brought a specific item home that you noticed things were happening that weren't happening before?
Yeah, I would say not so much things moving in my home, but physically and emotionally affecting me, absolutely. I know one of the items that we're probably going to look at is the twins crucifixes I have. So this set of twins died very young in age, and I have their casket plaques, and I have the crucifixes that were also on their coffin. And when I brought that thing home, first of all, I told my husband, he was so upset. He didn't want it anywhere near the house. He's never reacted any which way like he did with that thing. He was so upset when I called him and told him I bought it. So I bring it home, and it has the twins' energy and the mother's energy attached to it, from what I understand. I did not feel the twins, but I sure felt that mother. She had me in agony for an entire week. I have not wanted biological children. It's just not been part of my path. I was crying hysterically every night when I got home, saying, I missed my chance. I didn't have kids. And my husband's going, what's wrong with you? Like, you've never wanted kids. That's not something you've ever wanted. What are you talking about? He's like, take that thing out of the bedroom now. He's like, it's that thing.
So you think it was her emotion superimposed on you?
Absolutely.
So what'd you do with it? Did you remove it? Did you?
It's in the kitchen. I cleansed it.
Okay.
I also kind of tried to, I don't want to say connect, but kind of just talk through with what I think is attached to it, and just say, you have a safe home here, but you just can't keep coming at me the way you are. Like, I can't come home from a 14-hour workday and be hysterically crying every night when I go to bed. So that has since calmed down. That was a bit more of like the, I would say, negative emotional side, but I've also gotten pieces that are attached to lovely, like a 17-year-old girl, which is also one of the items I showed you, and they say her family's with it too. And when I hold it and when I'm near it, I get a sense of just love and loyalty and just beautiful family connection and
never
energy.
Anything flying off the walls or girls opening up on their own when you brought something home, just more energy that you feel. You just sort of...
Yeah, nothing moved until last night.
Okay.
Last night was the first time anything moved on me. So I thought that was really interesting.
What happened last night?
So you guys had asked me to take some pictures of some things, and one of them was the pearl rosary I mentioned went missing. It's been in the same place for the last 3 years that I've had it, gone, don't know where it is, can't find it, tore apart everything looking for it. So that went missing. Another item I have is a watch my grandfather gave me when he died in 2000 that was still running. I picked that up, it went dead, beeped, and then went to January 1st at midnight. Just the time changed. The time has been keeping since I got it, and it went.
You were telling us over the phone that this runs,
I had to call
and I
you.
said there's no reason for
Yeah.
it, and
yeah. And then I take the picture of the jug that has the death card with it, and the death card went missing. It's gone. I live in a 1-bedroom. It had nowhere to go.
it's just you and your husband too, right?
And I was alone at the time. Turned over the furniture, ripped the sheets off the bed, just turned over everything, and I still haven't found it. So it was a really interesting
Why do
night.
you think that that's the case?
I think that not everybody wants to be seen. I really do. I think that there are those of us that in life are intrinsic, and they maybe don't want to be broadcast. Maybe that item that woman had for 70 years is so special to her, and she wants to keep it special to her. Maybe she doesn't want the rest of us to see it.
She doesn't want to broadcast. Maybe she just wants it to be between you and her.
Yeah, because if you think about someone like that, they probably didn't lead a very extravagant life, and they were probably a little more private. And I just don't think she wanted me to broadcast her most prized possession to everybody watching.
Have you ever come across anything negative that you just walked away from because it's negative energy?
Absolutely. Going back to Creeper, she has a voodoo doll there. I actually think it's a little more Payo Mayambe, which is kind of a dark magic. And when I went near it, it made me want to throw up. It just was very, very bad energy. It was not made with love. It was very...
I know, I think you and I were the only two that didn't want to touch it.
I would not touch it. It was so nasty. And I just wouldn't ever want to welcome something in that gave me a feeling like that. Like, as much as I love haunted objects, there's negativity and there's positivity, and I'm not going to willingly allow negativity in my house.
You never had anything kind of turn on you, though? Anything that you did purchase initially under the guise of good vibes turned to bad vibes? That's sort of, they say that these negative spirits can be tricky, where they pretend to be one thing when they're really another. You've never had that kind of experience with anything?
Never had that kind of experience. I'm also not, I'm very careful with my intention when I purchase things, and the energy I keep in my home and the atmosphere we have in our home is very loving and positive. And I don't think things like that would do very well in my home. I've had, I wouldn't say negative, but we did talk about another rosary I got that when I held it, I had a lot of back pain. I started feeling like achy and almost kind of like flu-like. And when my medium put hands on it, she said that the person had suffered with a back condition and had arthritis issues, and that if I was going to keep it, I probably needed to cleanse it because it was going to continue to affect me physically.
Let's go on to the other side of this. And do you tell family and friends, or just everyday people, what you do?
I'll tell the milkman if he asks me. I mean, I don't, I am who I am. I think that it opens the door for conversation. I think that it's all in how you speak to people about it. If you make it hokey or you make it cartoony, that's how they're going to perceive it. But if you explain it, and a lot of times if they see things, people tend to be a little more understanding. And like I said, you'd be surprised how many people, once you acknowledge that you believe in it, how many people all of a sudden are okay with talking about it, because it can sometimes be taboo. Like you guys have said, you work for paranormal investigations, so people don't always take that and go, oh, okay, great. It's like working for the state of New Jersey. It's just not the same thing.
We either get someone who, oh yeah, I've got a story to tell you, or like, yeah okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, but along those same lines, if it were me and I didn't have those type of things, or I didn't go actively looking for them, I would want to know before entering your house that they were there. Give me the option of whether I want to expose myself. Do you tell people, hey, this is what I collect before you enter my home? This stuff is there.
Yeah, so the people who come to my home I'm very close with. I think welcoming somebody into your home is a very intimate experience. So a lot of my family and friends are the ones who would come over, and they are well aware. As soon as I buy something, it's on a text message.
Because I have those dolls from a previous show,
yeah,
and I wouldn't bring them into my home because just the thought that I knew there was an attachment to a few of them, so I wasn't going to expose anybody else to that except for myself. So I would want to know prior to going in anybody's home if they had quote unquote haunted objects. So I was just wondering if before entering, hey, I have these things in my house. Give me the option.
Yes, I always do, and I find that there's hardly ever fear. It's more fascination. Like people are actually then opposite, dying to come in and see what it is. And then you get the, you're crazy, but then you kind of start talking through it, and they hear the stories behind it, and everyone kind of chills out. Like
so you never had anybody say, hey, I went home that night and something happened. I had a weird dream about one of your objects, or something happened to my home.
I've had people come and then have very vivid dreaming. I wouldn't say that necessarily it was attached to that. I will say there's nights my husband doesn't When I called him last night to tell him what had happened in the house, I said, all right, listen, I saged, we're good, but I need to tell you what happened. And it was just like the Queen's accent came out. I was like, oh God, where am I going to sleep tonight? And so he actually living there freaks out more than people who visit.
And it's your thing. It's not his, so you can understand why he'd freak out a bit.
Right. He says he feels like sometimes he lives in like The Conjuring.
I offered to put his dolls in my basement. He goes, no, they're staying in the trunk.
Yeah.
That's how he feels.
There's no effects on his emotion, or you said that you felt physically affected. You feel some of the things that these objects are giving off, but for him,
no, and he's not a believer in the same way that I am. He's more, if I see it, if I experience it, if there's scientific data to back it up. You might know somebody who sounds like that.
No, not at all.
No, not even a little. He believes it. Our first meeting with you guys, he walked out and he said, see, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for proof. I wanted to see like scientific proof that what we talk about and what we think is really going on is really happening. So I tend to, that's his mindset, and he tends to be a little more closed off to things.
Yeah, see, because I am a diehard skeptic. Everybody knows that. I have to experience it, see it, to believe it. I do have my own beliefs, but even what you were telling me before about the crucifix items, or the one that had the mother, you sensed the mother's agony, and my skeptic mind would tell me why wouldn't you have your medium friend sort of handle that and converse with the spirit and let her know that you're keeping these things because you know someone cared about it. Now you care about it, so could you not affect the person who has it now?
I mean, that's a really fair question, and my answer would be I don't need my medium to do it. I did it myself.
Okay.
And that's the exact conversation I had with her, and since then it has ceased. It went for about a week and a half.
Oh, okay.
We did, and I just said, listen, this is your home. I want you to feel welcome here. You're going to be here with me. Don't feel the need to be so aggressive with how you affect me emotionally.
We had mentioned before too, you do go into stores and you're drawn immediately to, like, if they have a shelf that says haunted, you go right to there. Do you read the story first behind the object before you get attracted to it, or is it the emotions that pull you first?
Sure, always the emotion. The only place I've ever gone that had a story is Creeper, and even with that, I've always read the tags after. I don't want to know ahead of time what happened. There is one object there that every time I hold it, it makes me want to cry. I wouldn't bring that home. But yeah, it's always based on just physicality and what I feel. There's a lot of times where I get very choked up and I'll start getting really, really hot. It's almost like we're saying a game of Marco Polo, right? Like when you get closer to, something you're meant to be near, you start feeling.
Well, you had to leave one of our events because you started sweating and getting really overcome.
Yeah, I almost passed out.
I don't think you realized you were sitting actually right behind you was the object that was affecting you.
I have not come that close to passing out since I was probably a kid. It was just it was too much energy. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't really know. I definitely didn't know it was there, but I didn't realize how much stuff was going to be there.
Well, let's talk about that too. I mean, because you are the way you are and you collect the things you collect, what do you do to protect yourself or your home?
Yeah, so we do a lot of things. I'm a big fan of saging. I think it goes back to Native American culture. I think it has physical benefits as well. So if you don't believe in saging and you don't think it works, it's still good for the air. It gets rid of bacteria and things like that. But I do sage my house. We saged a lot last night. I burn a lot of incense, and I do keep evil eyes in my home. You're supposed to, in your home, always have one at a doorstep so that if someone walks in, the evil eye is automatically very protective. And I also do keep crystals in certain corners of my house to keep us protected.
Now, you talk about you come from a religious background, so you pray too?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we're going to show a few of the items you have.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about them, and you could tell us what it is.
Sure.
How you acquired it, and what feelings you get from these
What made
items.
you get them?
So let's look at the first item here. Tell us.
Okay, so this is the one I mentioned that is totally outside of my wheelhouse. This is not something I would have ever bought. It has.
What is it?
It's a jug.
Okay.
This was made by a 17-year-old girl, and she wanted something that would show all of her favorite things. I'll be honest, I think her favorite things are a little weird. She put like screws and cogs. She has some doll faces, which you can kind of see down there. I walked into Creeper, and automatically I was like, there's something in that case that I need, and I went right to that, and there was tons of religious stuff around it, and I had no feelings about any of those things whatsoever. I went right for this. It made my heart so warm the minute I touched it.
The next picture is the back of the same item. Now, again, we're seeing what, doll faces on there?
Yep, she has a heart right here. She has some screws up here. But they said when she died a year after she made this.
Okay.
And they say that her energy attached to it, and then later on when her family passed away, that they also attached their energy to this jug.
Any idea how old that item is?
She died it's going to be on the prayer card. I think she died in 1870, so it would have been about...
That's the next picture.
Yeah.
Which is the prayer card that came with the
1871.
item. Now, what is this? This is just a prayer that came with the item for what reason?
They say that Mary Jane, who's the spirit who's attached to it, likes her death certificate, her death notice to be with the jug at all times.
So weird.
I know. So it's always been kept together. You have to keep them together. Hopefully in the next couple of days we're going to find this, because this is what went missing in my home last night after it was literally right next to the jug, just went missing.
So it's almost like a validation to go along with the jug. It just keeps it going, like what you talked about before, why you're drawn to objects.
Absolutely, yeah.
What was the vibe? I mean, even when you brought it into your home, did you feel anything from it at that point as well, or just...
Yep. Every time I touch it, it's like coming home.
Really?
It's just very warm here. You just have a beautiful feeling of love and family. I get this was one of the most positive pieces I've ever been drawn to. And again, I think it's so funny that it's so outside of my wheelhouse. That's why I know.
Because you mentioned religious type of
nothing
items.
religious about it.
Yeah, that one's got creepy doll faces on it.
Sure does. Sure does.
It's like you're going out there and seeking light to bring into your home. Positive energy. You're always
Absolutely.
reinforcing your positive energy with the things you're bringing in.
It's all about connections for me.
All right, so let's go to the next picture here. Okay, now there look like two crosses to me, and I can't make out what the other item
They
is
both
there.
say Our Darling. So those were the coffin plaques for these twin girls that died when they were very, very young. Their mother died of a broken heart several months later. And again, this is what I think I felt was her grief and her sorrow. I don't even know what I was thinking about, but I put it next to my bed, because we didn't know where we were going to hang it yet.
Right.
We just, you say, okay, well, we'll hang it up. We'll figure out where it goes. And just the agony that came with this thing was so intense that my husband was like, get it out of the bedroom. Like, we'll figure out where we're going to put it. The bedroom is not where it's going. Like, we'll come back to it. Just put it somewhere else.
Well, again, what was the thought process around purchasing it? If you knew there was that kind of emotion and pain that you felt attached to it, why would you want to bring that into your home?
I'll give you an analogy. I recently rescued a guinea pig, and I've never liked guinea pigs in my whole entire life, never been drawn to them. If you told me I would ever have one, I would tell you were crazy. I walked into PetSmart to buy my dog food, and I saw this guinea pig, and she had been dropped off by someone who didn't want her anymore. And I just looked at her, and I was like, I don't know you, and you don't know me, but I know that you're meant to come home with me. And it's not something I would have ever thought I'd have in my home. I feel like this was the same way. This piece just spoke to me so much, and I had such a physical reaction to it that I felt like they should come home with me.
Did that reaction get stronger once you got home?
Yeah.
So it just kept intensifying until you finally...
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is actually the front of an item that we have a picture of the back as well. What is it, and where did you get it?
Yeah, for sure. So this is the only item that I didn't purchase.
Okay.
I live here in Woodbridge, and I was in my backyard, which is fenced in, and I saw something coming out of the dirt in the backyard in the grass, and I was like, what's that? I went over and I bent over, and it was this piece. And I said, how the heck did this get into my backyard? Like, no one comes back here. And I did some research. There's an inscription along the bottom. I'm not going to try to say Spanish because I'll just embarrass myself. But
it's religious symbolism.
It is. And it's actually, I researched it, and this image goes back to a brotherhood from Peru, a Catholic brotherhood that worships this particular painting because there was an earthquake that hit their village, and the painting was the only thing that survived. So I thought it was just so crazy that, like, a religious collector found this in her backyard. And then, you know, obviously on the back, we've got the inscription, which kind of made it a little crazier. Clearly, this was done as a memorial to somebody who passed away in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, and this piece, you know, we talk about connection. I think this is my most important connection piece because I was told that I'm meant to get this back to the family of Jacob.
Okay.
So I'm definitely going to, this is a piece I'm going to be doing some research and trying to reach out to maybe
this
local
is your goal
chapters. Yeah, because this piece is not meant to stay with me. I'm not the owner. So, and I know that. So, you know, that's something I'm definitely going to be working on, is finding out who that really belongs to. And I think, again, go back to connections. That family getting this piece back is going to mean something to them. And I think that's what all of this means.
Continuing the legacy.
That's really the bottom line, is you really think that you're extending the legacy of all these pieces that you buy, and the connection to them is sort of felt by you. You can feel the previous connection that has gone through these items.
Absolutely. I think they still deserve to have their story told and their memories carried on.
Do you believe that all items have some form of energy of the previous owner if they kept them long enough and if they were that important to them? Or is it just certain?
So I don't like to deal in absolutes. I think all and nothing are dangerous words.
Right.
I would say a lot more than we think.
Okay.
I think that if you walk into someplace, again, like Creeper, and she has her haunted case, I think there's way more haunted things in that store.
Not in the case.
Not just in the case. I bought a Sacred Heart plaque from her, and I'm convinced it's haunted. I haven't had somebody put hands on it yet, but I do think that energy does tend to stay with things. I think there are things we carry all through life. I have the same thing. I have my bear from when I was a newborn. It's still on my bedside. If I was going to come back and haunt anything, I think it would be that bear.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Stacy. A really interesting conversation to get into the mindset of someone who actually collects these items. So thank you for being here. It was great having you.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. We'll see you next time.